In this episode, we are kicking off a brand new mini-series, and I want to start it with a number. 3 years. That is how long Grüns existed as a company before Unilever came in and bought it. Grüns was founded in 2023 and acquired in April of 2026 for $1.2 billion. And the valuation at their Series B round, just a year before the deal closed, was $500 million. This is the quickest sale of a supplement company ever. 3 years is lightning speed. Unilever does not buy 3-year-old companies because they feel like it. They buy brands that have already proven something. And Grüns had proven something very specific. Then there's IM8 Health, co-founded by David Beckham. Yes, that David Beckham. They launched in December of 2024. By September of 2025, they had gone from about $600,000 a month in revenue to $6.6 million a month. That is 9 months. That is a growth rate of over 2,400%. Now, I am not here to tell you that you need a celebrity co-founder or a 9-figure exit to build a great supplement brand. That is not what this series is about. What this series is about is the pattern underneath all of it. Because when you look at Grüns and IM8 and what came before them, Oli, Smarty Pants, Goli, AG1, there is a thread running through all of them that the industry press keeps missing. They talk about the gummies, the formats, the celebrity deals, the retail distribution, and none of that is wrong. But none of it is the real story either. The real story is about buyer psychology. Specifically, it is about one problem that all of these brands solved that most supplement companies are still ignoring. And over the next 6 episodes, we are going to take each of these brands apart and show you exactly which psychological lever they pulled, why it worked, and what a brand doing between $500,000 and $20 million a year can actually do with that. Okay, let's get into it. Welcome to Health Business Mastery, the Creative Thirst podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Hewitt. So I want to start by talking about the conventional explanation for why a supplement brand wins, because it is worth laying out before I push back on it. The story most people tell goes something like this. You find a hot trend. Greens are hot right now. Longevity is hot. You build a strong product in that trend. You get your branding right. You get your ads working. You find a distribution channel and you grow. And if you grow fast enough and you have the right investors around the table, you get acquired. That story is not wrong, but it is incomplete. And the part it leaves out is the most important part for anyone actually trying to build and market one of these brands. Here's what I mean. Go look at the supplement graveyard. There are thousands of brands that followed that exact playbook. They found a trend. They built a solid product. They got their branding done. They ran ads, and they are either stuck at a few $100,000 a year, or they burned through their budget and shut down, or they are still grinding away trying to figure out why their conversion rate makes no sense given how good their product actually is. The product is not the problem. The marketing is not always the problem in the traditional sense either. The problem a lot of the time is that they do not understand how their buyer actually makes a decision. And that is the thing I have been saying on this podcast since the beginning. People do not buy supplements the way they buy other products. The buying psychology is different. And if you are applying generic direct-to-consumer e-commerce thinking to a supplement brand, you are leaving a lot of money on the table, sometimes all of it. So when I look at a brand like Grüns or IM8 or AG1 and I ask why they won, I am not just looking at the product or the format or the celebrity or the funding. I am asking, what did they understand about their buyer that everyone else missed? And the answer, when you really dig into it, is almost always the same thing. They understood the adherence problem. The adherence problem is one of the most underappreciated concepts in supplement marketing. When someone buys a supplement, they are not just buying the product. They are buying a version of themselves that actually takes it consistently enough for it to work. And that second purchase is the commitment to the habit of taking it. This is the harder sell. Harder by a long shot, actually. Think about your own experience or think about your customers. How many of them have a cabinet full of supplements that they bought with full intention and then stopped taking in 2 weeks in? Or a protein powder they forgot about? Or a Grüns formula that tasted so bad they could not get through the first bag? Or the 6 capsules they had to take at a time that just felt like a consignment? Not everyone is taking a dozen different supplements like you and I. Now these supplements work in theory, but the behavior of taking them never stuck with the customer. There's no new habit that was formed. That experience of buying something and not sticking with it does not just mean the customer failed. It means they now have a specific memory attached to your category, a memory of trying and not following through. And that memory becomes a belief and lives in the buying decision the next time they consider a supplement. So the next time they land on your sales page, they are not just evaluating your supplement or ingredients. They are evaluating whether they believe they can actually stick with it this time. They are asking somewhere underneath the surface, is this going to be different from the last thing I tried? That is a psychological hurdle that has almost nothing to do with your ingredients or your science or your certifications. It is a hope problem, and most supplement brands are not even aware it exists, let alone addressing it in their marketing. Chad Janis, the founder of Grüns, said something when the Unilever deal was announced that I thought was remarkably honest for a founder talking about their own company. He said the supplement industry's biggest barrier was not awareness. It was adherence. People already know they should be taking their greens. The problem is they do not. That is the insight that built a brand worth acquiring by one of the biggest consumer goods companies on the planet in 3 years. Now think about how Grüns actually solved that problem. They put greens in a gummy, which sounds simple, and on the surface it is. But what they actually did is remove the biggest friction point in the habit loop. The taste and texture experience that was killing adherence for every other Grüns product on the market. They did not just change the format, they removed the excuse. And when you remove the excuse, you change what the buyer believes is possible for them. That is a buying psychology play. But Grüns did not invent this idea. They just executed it in a new category. The brands that came before them figured this out first. And watching the whole arc from Oli to Smarty Pants to Goli to AG1 to Grüns and IM8, you can see the same principle getting applied and refined over and over again. Oli launched in 2015. And what they did was not complicated. They made vitamins look and feel like a lifestyle product instead of a pharmacy product. Bright colors, friendly packaging, names that sounded like something you would want, not something your doctor prescribed. They moved the category out of the functional aisle and into the emotional aisle. And here is why that matters from a buying psychology standpoint. When a product sits in the functional part of the brain, the buyer is in problem-solving mode. They are evaluating. They are skeptical. They are comparing ingredients and reading labels. When a product sits in the lifestyle part of the decision, the buyer is in a different frame entirely. They are aspiring. They are imagining a future version of themselves. The emotional mind is engaged. Ollie understood that the supplement buyer has two minds operating at the same time, the functional mind and the emotional mind, and most of the category was only talking to the functional mind. Ollie leaned hard into the emotional mind, and Unilever bought them in 2019. Smarty Pants did something adjacent. They combined the gummy format with a premium ingredient story and a family-focused identity. They were not just selling vitamins, they were selling a belief that taking care of your family was something you could actually do consistently because the product made it easy enough to become a ritual. Unilever bought them in 2020. Then Goli comes along with apple cider vinegar gummies. Now, apple cider vinegar as a health supplement had been around forever. People knew about it. They had tried it. And most of them had stopped because drinking actual apple cider vinegar is gross. Goli did not invent the benefit. They removed the barrier. Same insight as Grüns, different ingredient, different moment in time. They turned one of the most consistently abandoned supplement habits into something people would actually do every day. And then AG1 built the whole brand around a single idea that is so psychologically powerful. I am going to spend an entire episode on it later in this series. The idea was that instead of taking 12 different supplements and trying to build a habit around all 12, you take one thing and your health is handled. That is not a product positioning statement. That is a belief reframe. And when you are in the business of selling supplements, getting someone to adopt a new belief is one of the hardest and most valuable things you can do. So the pattern looks like this. Ollie engaged the emotional mind. Smarty Pants made the habit feel achievable for a family. Goli removed the barrier to an existing desired habit. A G1 simplified the identity of what a healthy person does. Grüns solved the adherence problem in the greens category specifically. And IM8 went in a completely different direction, which is a trust and science play that we are going to unpack in full later in this series. Each one of these brands pulled on a different psychological lever. And each one of them did it in a way that the broader supplement market was not doing at that moment. But most supplement brands keep missing it. I think there are a few reasons why. The first is that most supplement brands start with the product, they have a formula or they want to build a formula, and then they think about marketing. And when marketing comes second, it tends to default to talking about what the product does. Here are the ingredients. Here's the science. Here's why this works. That is not wrong. But it is only half of the conversation because the supplement buyer is not just asking whether the product works. They are asking whether it will work for them. And that is a different question. It requires a different answer. It requires marketing that addresses their specific history of trying and failing, their skepticism, their emotional state, their existing beliefs about what is even possible. The second reason is that most generic direct-to-consumer marketing advice does not account for this. The playbooks that circulate in e-commerce, the frameworks that get applied to supplements because they came from apparel or software or consumer packaged goods, they are not built for a buyer who is simultaneously making a functional decision and an emotional decision at the same time. Selling supplements is different. I have been saying this for years, and the evidence keeps piling up. The brands that win are not the ones that execute generic e-commerce marketing better than everyone else. They are the ones that understand supplement buyer psychology well enough to speak directly to what is actually happening in their buyer's mind. And there is a framework for understanding that psychology. It is something I have built out over more than a decade of working specifically in this space. And it comes down to 4 forces that drive every supplement buying decision. If you're a long-time listener, you know what they are. But I am going to introduce the 4 forces here quickly because they are the lens we're going to use for the rest of this series. But I am not going to go deep on any single force in this episode. Each one is going to get its own treatment through the lens of the brands we are analyzing. The 4 forces are trust, belief, desire, and hope. Desire and hope are the pushing forces. They push the buyer toward a purchasing decision. Desire is rooted in the problem the buyer wants to solve, the situation they want to move away from. Hope is what gives that desire energy. Hope is the belief that this specific supplement might actually be the one that works for me this time. Without hope, desire just sits there. It does not convert into action, and there is no sale. Trust and belief are different because they can work as both pushing forces and pulling forces. Trust can push a buyer toward you when you position yourself against a common enemy. But trust can also pull a buyer away if they do not believe your brand is credible. Belief works similarly. A buyer's existing belief can be the thing that makes your message land perfectly, or it can be the wall that your marketing keeps bouncing off of because you are trying to change a belief instead of aligning with one. Every winning brand in this series pulled on at least one of these forces in a meaningful way. Some pulled on two. And when I show you which force each brand mastered, I think you are going to see your own brand in a new way. Because here's the practical question this series is really trying to answer. If you are running a supplement brand and you are somewhere between 500,000 and 20 million a year, what can you actually take from what these brands did and apply right now? If you're just getting started with your supplement brand, this is the map for you to follow. The answer is not go raise $100 million and hire a celebrity co-founder. The answer is to understand which of these four forces your marketing is currently weakest on, because that is almost always the reason a conversion rate is underperforming. That's the psychological force that is missing from the conversation, either in the ads or on the page. Let me give you a quick example of what I mean before we close out this episode. Think about the adherence problem we talked about earlier. The buyer who lands on your sales page has tried supplements before and stopped. Their hope is low. They are interested, but they are already half expecting to be disappointed. And if your marketing goes straight into the ingredients and the science, you have completely skipped the part where you address their hope. You have given their functional mind information to evaluate, but you have done nothing for their emotional mind. The hope force is absent from your copy, and your conversion rate reflects that. That is the kind of diagnosis that changes a brand. And that is what this series is going to show you how to do, using real brands as the case studies. So here is the roadmap for what we are building together over the next 5 episodes. Episode 2 is going to be about Ollie, Smarty Pants, and Goalie. The era that proved format is a marketing decision. The psychological principle we are going to pull out of those brands is desire, and specifically how reducing friction is actually a desire amplification strategy. These brands did not create new desire. They removed what was killing it. That is a subtle distinction with a massive impact on how you approach your own marketing. Episode 3 is going to be about AG1. This is the belief episode. A G1 built a brand on a single belief reframe, and it turned into the benchmark that every Grüns company gets compared against. We're going to take apart exactly what that belief was and how they constructed their marketing around it. Episode 4 is going to be about Grüns. This is the hope episode. We are going to break down how they used format as a mechanism of hope, what that looks like from a copy and positioning standpoint, and what it means that Unilever, who already owned Ollie and Smarty Pants and Nutrafol, then saw Grüns as the next piece to buy in their portfolio. Episode 5 is going to be about IM8. This is the trust episode. IM8 is doing something different from everyone else in this series, and it is worth a full episode because the way they have built trust is a masterclass in talking to a very specific buyer with a very specific belief system. We will also get into the celebrity co-founder component and what that actually does psychologically beyond the obvious surface level answer of reach and awareness. And episode 6 is the conclusion. What do all of these brands have in common at the psychological level? What does that mean for your brand right now? And how do you actually run a diagnostic on your own marketing to figure out which of the 4 forces you're missing? That last episode is probably going to be the most practical and useful thing I am going to put out in this entire series, because it takes everything we learn from these case studies and gives you a way to apply it without $100 million in funding or a celebrity on the cap table. So that is episode 1, the thesis, the pattern, the framework we are going to use to decode it. The short version is this. The supplement brands that are winning at the highest level are not winning because they have the best product or the biggest budget. They are winning because they solved a psychological problem that most of their competitors did not even know existed. And that problem is something you can address in your marketing, in your positioning, in the way you talk to a cold prospect who has tried and failed before. People do not buy supplements the way they buy other products. And the brands that understand that deeply enough to build their entire company around it, those are the ones getting acquired by Unilever. If you want to go deeper on this before episode 2 drops, there is a link in the show notes to the Supplement Business Accelerator. That is my group coaching program at Creative Thirst, where we work through this kind of diagnostic in real time with your actual brand. It is not a course you consume and forget. It is a working session every week where we apply this framework to your specific conversion challenges. You can check it out at creativethirst.com/group. It is for startup supplement co-apneas. So if you're a bigger brand, then reach out to me directly. Just go to creativethirst.com and fill out the client application. Episode 2 is coming up next Sunday, where we'll look at Ollie, Smarty Pants, Goalie, and the desire principle that built 3 separate exits. Until then, I'll see you next time.